Yeah?
Well, the SPLA-IO headquarters in Malakal, Upper Nile State, have just been taken over by what many sources are saying are the Agwelek Militia. These are the militia that are working with the South and East Defense Forces in Upper Nile State to fight the White Army and the SPLA-IO. Now, there are different accounts depending on who you are listening to regarding this particular very sensitive issue. The SPLA-IO, who are allied to the first vice president, are saying that it is the Agwelek, supported by the South and East Defense Forces, that have taken over these SPLA-IO headquarters in Malakal. The SPLA-IO, that is allied to Stephen Parkour, says that there is no problem in these people taking over these particular headquarters, and that they are working with the government to see that the headquarters will be returned to the SPLA-IO. The government itself has its own version, as well as the SPLM in government that has the authority in Upper Nile says a different story. Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you about what that means, that right now, even the facilities that are run by the SPLM-IO faction that is allied to the government are being confiscated by the government forces and government militia. Well, this is Bonafide. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe and hit that notification button so that when I release something new on South Sudan, you get notified as soon as possible. Well, despite the noise that is out there regarding this very sensitive activity that was taken by the government of the day, there are several things that are agreed by all parties. That one, this was a hostile takeover. This headquarters was being manned by the SPLM-IO faction that is allied to Stephen Parkour. This is the faction that left the SPLM-IO that is led by the first vice president Riek Machar and decided to work with the government. Now, this headquarters was manned by this faction of Stephen Parkour, and a hostile takeover took place, and government forces are in charge of that particular headquarters. Also, something else is very, very clear. That is, the government forces and the Agwelek have been involved in taking over these particular headquarters. Now, what differs is who is in charge and what are the repercussions of this hostile takeover of these headquarters. Because the SPLM-IO, that is allied to the first vice president Riek Machar, says that this should not happen, that this headquarters was a very important hub of logistics for the SPLM-IO, despite the fact that this faction that is led by the first vice president was not in control of that headquarters. They are saying that even the SPLM-IO that is working with the government has been targeted by the government itself in the operations. It means that perhaps the SPLM-IO that is led by Stephen Parkour is not privy to the activities that the government keeps on doing and the operations that the government keeps on doing, more so in these hostile regions of Upper Nile and Central Equatoria states. This also points to the fact that there is some sort of disorganization in the way the government is operating. Also, with all these actors, the SPLM-IO of Stephen Parkour, the militia that is supporting the government forces, the government contingents, and all other actors that are supporting the government, there is some kind of confusion, and perhaps there are messages or communications that are not reaching different parties that led to this particular hostile takeover of a friendly organization that is working with the government of the day. This takeover also shows the stature of the Agwelek. Going by the accounts that were given by the SPLM-IO faction led by the first vice president, it shows that the Agwelek has a very high standing to the South and East Defense Forces, that they can be allowed to take over headquarters that was led by the SPLM-IO faction that is working with the government. This really shows that the government is really taking keen concern of the operations of the Agwelek in Upper Nile that is assisting the government forces to fight the White Army and the SPLM-IO forces that are fighting against the government. But going with the accounts of the SPLM-IO faction led by Stephen Parkour, Muzamil Ojok, the interim chairperson of SPLM-IO under Stephen Parkour's leadership, confirmed that senior South and East Defense Forces officer from Division 2 is currently occupying the premise. On why they did not issue a statement, they say that they opted to engage with the state authorities. That is the reason that the Stephen Parkour-led SPLM-IO said that we did not want to issue a statement over this hostile takeover that was done by the government officials, but we wanted to engage with the government authorities to understand why this exactly happened and why it happened at such a moment when there are very many activities, hostile activities at Upper Nile State, where all communication is very important to pass through all the channels and all the organizations that are working with the government to fight the SPLA-IO that is led by the first vice president and the White Army in Upper Nile. And the confusion by the government could be noted by the statement that was released by the State Security Advisor General El Taib Kiech Ajak. He said that the state government was unaware of the incident and has instructed the forces occupying the SPLM-IO headquarters to vacate it within 72 hours. It means perhaps this occupation had not gone through the ranks to know that there are some soldiers of the South Sudanese Defense Forces or the Agwelek that have occupied a full headquarters run by the SPLM-IO faction that is working with the government. The State Security Advisor says that he didn't know that this happened, and he has commanded the officers that have taken charge of that headquarters to vacate it within 72 hours. Well, it is important to note that this is happening just as President Salva Kiir suspended Vice President Riek Machar last week, and the SPLM-IO led by Riek Machar has denied the charges and declared the transitional government illegitimate and that the government has collapsed, and it has vowed to push for a regime change in South Sudan. And that is when the SPLM-IO called all its members and citizens of South Sudan to take up arms against the government of the day. Well, at the same time, the SPLM-IO faction that is led by Stephen Parkour has said that it will continue to work with Salva Kiir and the SPLM in government to continue to implement the revitalized agreement that was signed in 2018. So these are the different statements that are coming out after that hostile takeover of the SPLM-IO headquarters in Malakal, Upper Nile State, that was run by the faction that pays allegiance to Stephen Parkour as the SPLM-IO faction that is working with the government. Well, I will continue to keep you updated and informed of the latest of what will come out after this hostile takeover of this headquarters that was led by Stephen Parkour. Keep it bonified.